The Talmud teaches that when the hour of Israel's liberation was at hand, Moses did not concern himself with the spoils of Egypt. Instead, he remembered the promise his ancestors made to carry the bones of their ancestor Joseph out of the land of bondage. Although he did not know the secret of where Joseph's remains were buried, he recalled that Serach, the daughter of Asher, knew. And so he went to her and said, "Serach, the time of our liberation is near. Can you tell me where the casket of our father Joseph lies buried so that we may carry it to the promised land?" "It is at the bottom of the Nile," she answered. "The Egyptians fashioned a casket of iron for him and placed it there so that the waters that nourished their fields would be blessed. You will never be able to retrieve it from the water." Undaunted, Moses called several men to serve as bearers for Joseph's casket and set out for the banks of the Nile. When they reached the river's edge, Moses cried out, "Joseph, Joseph, the time for the liberation of your children has come. Therefore show yourself that we may honor our oath and bring you back to the land of your birth." No sooner had Moses finished speaking than Joseph's casket floated to the surface and over to the bank. The men hoisted it upon their shoulders, and the Israelites carried it with them all the way to Mount Sinai, where they received the commandments. And from Mount Sinai, they bore it on their shoulders alongside the Ark of the Covenant with those tablets of the law. Thus, for 40 years, as the Israelites made their way through the wilderness, they carried with them one ark containing the bones of Joseph and another containing the 10 Commandments. Travelers they encountered along the way would ask them, "What is contained in these two arks that you carry?" And the Israelites would reply, "One contains the bones of the dead, and the other is a vessel for God's presence." "Is it your custom," the strangers would ask, "to carry the dead alongside the divine?" To which the Israelites would respond, "The one whose remains lie in this ark fulfilled all that is contained in the other." And so the nations learned the wisdom of Israel. For the Israelites knew that in their pursuit of the future, they must always bear with them the memories of those who came before. We too carry the memories of those who came before. Remembering is a primary Jewish act. Samantha articulated that so beautifully in her wonderful teaching about Moses and his courageous leadership, and about her great-grandmother Dorothy, too. We remember the past and those who shaped it, that we might carry their legacies forward to shape our futures for the better. We should note that for Americans, the coming week is certainly one of memory, as we recall the nearly 3,000 heroes and fellow citizens, husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, children, grandchildren too, who died on 9/11, the hundreds of firefighters, police officers, and emergency and rescue personnel, the friends who wouldn't leave others behind. Tragically, they are gone, but not their legacy of courageous self-sacrifice. And we know that for Jews, the coming week is one of memory. Rosh Hashanah is also called Yom HaZikaron, the Day of Remembrance, because on Rosh Hashanah we remember the covenant, the relationship God established with our ancestors at Sinai when, as an act of great love, God gave us the commandments. And on Rosh Hashanah we pray that God will also remember that moment, so that no matter what we may have done in the past year that doesn't measure up to those commandments, God will forgive us. So the Talmud teaches the Israelites carried 2 arks in the desert, the first with Joseph's bones, and the second, the 10 Commandments. But the Talmud says something else was in that second ark too. In this week's parashah, Nitzavim Vayelech, which Sam chanted so beautifully, Moses continues his final address to the Israelites before he prepares for his own death. In the portion's opening words, he reminds them of their covenant, their relationship with God, which includes them, from the richest to the poorest, but also those who have not yet been born. Please follow along in your handouts that you received with your prayer books as I look at Deuteronomy 29, verses 9 through 14. You stand this day, all of you, before Adonai your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from wood chopper to water drawer, to enter into the covenant of Adonai your God, which Adonai your God is concluding with you this day with its sanctions, to the end that God may establish you this day as God's people and be your God, as God promised you, as God swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I make this covenant with its sanctions not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us this day before Adonai our God, and those who are not with us here this day. So that Moses' instructions won't be forgotten by the people once they enter the promised land without him, Moses writes them down. Take a look at these next verses from later in our portion, Deuteronomy 31. When Moses had put down in writing the words of this teaching to the very end, Moses charged the Levites who carried the Ark of the Covenant of Adonai, saying, "Take this book of teaching and place it beside the Ark of the Covenant of Adonai your God, and let it remain there." Now, the rabbis of the Talmud noticed something unusual about that last verse. If the Israelites were to be carrying the ark on their journey, the preposition I bolded confused them. What question do you think they might have asked? Any thoughts? Yeah. Why can't it just go in the ark? Why does it have to go beside the ark? Exactly. Now let's take a look at their answer from the Talmud, Baba Batra. It was placed beside the ark and not in it. This intimates that the fragments of the tablets were also deposited in the ark. So apparently there wasn't room because there was something else in there, namely the fragments of the tablets. What does that refer to? Yeah, exactly. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the first set of tablets, he saw that the Israelites were worshiping a golden calf. And so he dashed those tablets at the foot of the mountain. Apparently, the fragments of those tablets, that first set, are also in the ark. There wasn't room for Moses' teaching in Deuteronomy inside the ark because the ark was filled with tablets, the whole ones and the broken ones. As the Israelites journeyed to the promised land, they carried with them both sets, an image which I believe is instructive for us as we prepare to enter into a new year, because we too carry our brokenness, our disappointments in others and in ourselves, the promises we failed to keep, the pain we may have caused or suffered. But the holy days urge us to consider these hurts not as broken pieces of something old, but rather as first pieces of something new. If we learn from our mistakes, if we're made softer and more compassionate by our own hurts, then the process we call atonement, literally at-one-ment, enables us to put the broken pieces back together into something new and beautiful. we also carry two arks. One represents the memories of those who came before us, be they the heroes of this country who perished 22 years ago Monday, or our Jewish ancestors like Joseph and Moses, or members of our own families whose presence we will always feel. And on this day, which draws us ever closer to a new year, we carry that other ark as well. In it is the recognition of our own imperfections, our own broken pieces, but also the promise of wholeness and repair each new year brings.